The first warning came as a subtle disruption in the solar wind. Deep space monitoring stations scattered across the solar system detected an anomaly that didn't match any known stellar phenomenon. At the European Space Agency's Advanced Tracking Center in French Guiana, senior scientist Dr. Melissa Durand leaned closer to the holographic display, her breath catching in her throat. Something was approaching, something massive. The initial detection was almost imperceptible, a slight gravitational disturbance at the edge of the Kuiper belt. Most would have dismissed it as a statistical anomaly, but Dr. Durand had spent her entire career studying the impossible. Her team had developed predictive algorithms that could detect the most minute variations in space-time, algorithms that had been repeatedly mocked by her more conservative colleagues. "Zoom in," she commanded the holographic interface. Her fingers danced across the translucent display, pulling the image closer, revealing intricate patterns of energy that seemed to defy known physics. Across the world, similar scenes played, out in advanced research centers, at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, at the Chinese National Space Administration, and in the hidden research facilities of the United Nations Aerospace Command. Scientists were experiencing the same moment of profound realization. First contact was imminent. The approaching fleet wasn't just large, it was incomprehensibly vast. Massive ships that seemed to be constructed from materials that shifted and changed, defying the basic principles of matter as understood by human science. Each vessel was kilometers long, with geometric shapes that suggested intelligence far beyond human comprehension. Communication attempts began immediately. Standard protocols developed over decades of space exploration were deployed. Mathematical sequences, prime number transmissions, universal constants. Signals were broadcast across multiple wavelengths, a desperate attempt to establish communication before potential conflict. In orbital stations and ground control centers, humanity held its collective breath. The Zorn Collective, observing these initial communications, found them primitively amusing. Their advanced sensors mapped every inch of human infrastructure, the handful of permanent lunar bases, the struggling Martian colonies, the orbital stations that represented humanity's tenuous grip on space exploration. Fleet Commander Zerax reviewed the preliminary reports with a mixture of condescension and scientific curiosity. Humans were fascinating in their complexity, yet ultimately unremarkable in their technological development. Their fastest ships would take decades to cross what the Zorn could traverse in days. Their most advanced weapons were little more than sophisticated firecrackers compared to the Zorn's planet-killing technologies. Preliminary assessment, Zerax dictated to the ship's central intelligence. Species classification, pre-spaceflight. Potential for resistance, negligible. Projected time for complete system conquest, approximately 72 standard cycles. What the Zorn didn't understand was the nature of human potential. In research facilities and military command centers around the globe, humanity was already preparing. The detection of the alien fleet wasn't a moment of panic, but a moment of calculated preparation. Decades of science fiction, military strategy, and technological innovation had prepared them for this moment. Dr. Sarah Martinez, leading a multinational team of strategic analysts, was already simulating potential engagement scenarios. Her team represented the best of human collaboration: scientists, military strategists, linguists, and technological experts from every corner of the globe. They understood something that the Zorn could not comprehend. Humanity's greatest strength was never in its current capabilities, but in its ability to adapt, to learn, to overcome. "They're coming," Martinez said quietly, her voice steady. "And we'll be ready." The orbital defense systems, which had seemed primitive to the Zorn's initial scans, began to activate. What appeared to be simple communication arrays and research platforms started to reconfigure. Modular design, a hallmark of human engineering, allowed for rapid transformation. Humanity had been preparing for this moment without even knowing. Every technological challenge, every scientific breakthrough, every conflict and collaboration had been an unconscious preparation for this ultimate test. The stars trembled. First contact was moments away. and the universe was about to learn a fundamental truth about the human species. They were anything but ordinary. The first volley came without warning. Massive energy beams lanced through the darkness of space, targeting Earth's orbital infrastructure with surgical precision. Observation satellites, communication relays, and research stations erupted in silent explosions, creating a deadly light show against the backdrop of stars. Inside the United Nations Aerospace Command Center, alarms blared with a haunting intensity. Holographic displays flickered, tracking the catastrophic destruction in real time. Dr. Marcus Chen, the center's lead tactical coordinator, moved with calculated calm that belied the chaos around him. "Initiate Defensive Protocol Omega," he commanded, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. Years of preparation, countless simulation scenarios, and an intimate understanding of human adaptability were about to be put to the ultimate test. The Zorn expected a quick capitulation. Their initial assault was designed to demonstrate overwhelming superiority, a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. Entire orbital platforms disintegrated under the initial barrage, years of human technological achievement reduced to expanding clouds of debris. But humanity had never been a species to surrender. What the Zorn didn't anticipate was the modular design of human space infrastructure. What appeared to be isolated stations were actually interconnected systems with redundant capabilities. As one platform was destroyed, others immediately reconfigured, redistributing critical systems with lightning speed. Lieutenant Rebecca Williams piloted one of the first responsive defense vessels. Her ship, the SMS Resilience, was part of a new class of spacecraft designed with unprecedented adaptability. Where traditional military doctrine suggested large, heavily armored vessels, the human approach emphasized mobility, rapid communication, and intelligent networked defense. Pattern Delta. Williams spoke into her communication system. Her voice was steady, almost calm. Around her, a squad of 6 smaller vessels began to move with a synchronicity that defied traditional combat algorithms. The Zorn command watched in growing confusion. Human ships didn't respond like any species they had encountered before. Instead of clustering for protection, they scattered. Instead of presenting a unified defensive line, they seemed to dance between the massive alien vessels. Each human ship became a moving target, using gravitational assists, improvised maneuvers, and communication techniques that seemed to transcend traditional tactical thinking. They weren't just defending, they were learning, adapting in real time. Deep within the Zorn flagship, Fleet Commander Zerax felt the first tremor of uncertainty. The preliminary reports had classified humans as a pre-spaceflight civilization. These tactics suggested something entirely different. Analyze their movement patterns, Zerax demanded of the ship's central intelligence, but even as the command was issued, human vessels were already changing their approach, rendering previous observations obsolete. Dr. Sarah Martinez watched from the ground control center, her team working with a precision that looked almost like a choreographed dance. They weren't just responding to the attack, they were collecting data, understanding alien technology with each passing moment. Gravitational anomaly detected, one of her analysts called out. They're using our own solar system against them. It was true. Human ships were using the complex gravitational interactions of planets, moons, and asteroid belts as both shield and weapon. A small vessel would suddenly accelerate using a planet's gravitational pull, turning what should have been a disadvantage into an unexpected offensive maneuver. The Zorn had conquered hundreds of civilizations. They had developed technologies that could shatter planets, manipulate entire star systems. But they had never encountered a species that could turn the universe itself into a weapon of war. As the first hour of conflict concluded, something became terrifyingly clear to the Zorn collective. This was not going to be the quick conquest they had anticipated. This was going to be a war unlike any in galactic history. Humanity was fighting, and humanity was just getting started. Communication intercepts became the most critical battlefield of the emerging conflict. While physical combat raged across the solar system, a more subtle war unfolded in the realm of information, psychology, and cultural understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez leaned back in her chair, a holographic display of alien communication patterns dancing before her eyes. Her team of linguists, psychologists, and communication specialists represented humanity's most unconventional weapon: the ability to understand, interpret, and ultimately manipulate an alien civilization's communication systems. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. What the Zorn believed to be secure communication channels were actually becoming increasingly compromised. Human analysts discovered that the alien communication network was built on a hierarchical system that valued absolute precision and eliminated individual variation. In stark contrast, human communication was beautifully chaotic. Lieutenant David Kim sat in a small, darkened room filled with advanced communication equipment. His job was unlike any traditional military role. Where previous wars relied on direct combat, this conflict was being fought through layers of psychological warfare, information manipulation, and cultural understanding. "We're not just listening," Kim explained to his team. "We're learning their entire communication ecosystem." The Zorn communication systems were remarkably complex, a network of quantum-entangled signals that transmitted information with near-instantaneous precision. But they had a fundamental weakness. Their communication was so structured, so predictable, that it became a vulnerability. Human analysts began to introduce subtle inconsistencies, small disruptions that would be considered noise in the Zorn's communication network became increasingly problematic. Where the aliens expected absolute clarity, humans introduced ambiguity, humor, and unexpected emotional complexity. Intercepted Zorn communications revealed their growing frustration. Their initial reports, filled with clinical assessments of human capabilities, began to show signs of confusion. Words like unpredictable and illogical appeared with increasing frequency. Dr. Rodriguez understood the deeper implication. The Zorn's entire societal structure was built on predictability. Their military, their communication, their entire civilization operated on the principle that everything could be calculated, predicted, and controlled. Humanity represented the ultimate variable. In military communication channels, human soldiers and strategists communicated with a mixture of technical precision and unexpected emotional depth. Their jokes, their cultural references, their ability to find humor in the most dire circumstances became a form of psychological warfare. A captured communication log showed the depth of this psychological complexity. Transmission intercept, human military channel. Soldier DA. Anyone else think these alien ships look like oversized kitchen appliances? Soldier B. Definitely. My microwave has more personality. Tactical coordinator. Confirmed. Prepare gravitational disruption protocol. The Zorn found this incomprehensible. How could a species facing potential extinction communicate with such apparent lack of concern? What they didn't understand was that this was a fundamental aspect of human resilience, the ability to find humor, to maintain psychological balance. In the most extreme circumstances, psychological profile teams worked around the clock. Every intercepted communication, every captured piece of technology, was a window into the Zorn's collective mindset. They discovered a civilization so focused on efficiency that it had eliminated most forms of individual expression. Humans, by contrast, thrived on individual variation. The communication warfare reached a critical point when human analysts began to introduce deliberate mistranslations and contextual ambiguities into Zorn communication networks. What seemed like simple errors were actually carefully constructed psychological disruptions. Fleet Commander Zerax watched in growing confusion as the communication integrity of the Zorn collective began to fracture. The humans were doing something unprecedented. They were turning communication itself into a weapon. As the conflict entered its second week, one thing became abundantly clear. This was not going to be a war decided by traditional military might. This was a conflict that would be won through adaptability, psychological resilience, and the beautiful, chaotic complexity of human communication. The Zorn were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was its unpredictability. The research facility buried deep beneath the Atacama Desert hummed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Rachel Chen stood before a collection of captured Zorn technology, her eyes reflecting a mixture of scientific excitement and strategic determination. "Begin primary analysis," she commanded the team of multinational researchers assembled from the world's top scientific institutions. What had begun as a defensive war was rapidly transforming into the most significant technological leap in human history. Each piece of alien technology was more than a weapon to be studied. It was a key to unlock mysteries of physics, engineering, and computational science that humanity had barely imagined. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A small quantum communication relay, no larger than a human hand, contained computational complexity that would have taken traditional human engineers decades to comprehend. But this was no ordinary research team. Dr. Chen's approach was revolutionary. Instead of attempting to understand the technology through existing human scientific paradigms, her team deconstructed the alien tech completely. They broke it down to its most fundamental components, approaching each piece as a unique puzzle with no preconceived solutions. In orbital research stations, similar scenes played out. Engineers worked in shifts, their collaborative efforts spanning continents and time zones. What the Zorn had developed over millennia, humans were beginning to comprehend in weeks. Lieutenant Michael Rodriguez oversaw the practical application team. His group wasn't just studying the technology, they were actively adapting it for human use. A captured Zorn energy shield generator was being rapidly modified, its alien principles merged with human engineering concepts. "We're not copying," Rodriguez explained to his team. "We're reimagining." The difference was crucial. Where most species would attempt to replicate alien technology exactly, humans saw each captured piece as a starting point for innovation. A Zorn propulsion system became the basis for an entirely new approach to space travel. Their quantum communication technology was reconstructed with human creativity, adding layers of adaptability that the original designers had never conceived. Global research centers worked in unprecedented collaboration. The traditional barriers of national competition dissolved in the face of the alien threat. Universities in Beijing worked in real time with research facilities in São Paulo. Scientific teams in New Delhi collaborated seamlessly with laboratories in Stockholm. Dr. Chen discovered something extraordinary about the Zorn technology. Despite its apparent complexity, it was fundamentally rigid. The alien technology was designed for specific, predetermined purposes. Human technology, by contrast, was built with adaptability as a core principle. A captured Zorn computational system became a breakthrough moment. Where the alien technology processed information in strictly linear patterns, the human team began to introduce recursive and adaptive algorithms. They were essentially teaching the alien technology to think like a human, unpredictable, creative, capable of lateral solutions. "It's not about understanding their technology," Dr. Chen told her team. "It's about understanding the philosophy behind their technology." The military implications were profound. Each piece of captured Zorn equipment was transformed from a weapon of conquest into a catalyst for human technological evolution. Energy systems were modified to be more efficient. Communication networks were rebuilt to be more resilient. Propulsion technologies were reimagined with a human touch of creativity. In orbital workshops, engineers worked with a passion that bordered on artistic creation. A Zorn energy weapon was modified to become a revolutionary power generation system. Their quantum communication relay became the basis for a new generation of global communication technology that would revolutionize human connectivity. Fleet Commander Zhang, overseeing the military technological adaptation, understood the deeper significance. This wasn't just about winning a war. This was about a fundamental transformation of human technological understanding. As weeks passed, something remarkable happened. The technology being developed was no longer just an adaptation of alien systems. It was becoming something entirely new, a hybrid of human creativity and alien engineering that surpassed both original sources. The Zorn had come to conquer. Instead, They were about to witness the most rapid technological evolution in galactic history. Humanity was not just defending itself, humanity was transforming. The first transmission came from the Krelvax diplomatic outpost, hidden in the shadows of a neutron star cluster. Their message was encrypted, but its intent was clear. A plea for understanding, for hope. Dr. Elena Rodriguez studied the intercepted communication with careful intensity. Her team of xenolinguists and diplomatic analysts worked around the clock, decoding not just the words but the profound desperation behind them. The Zorn Collective's galactic dominance had been built on a system of calculated oppression. Dozens of species had been subjugated over millennia, their cultures suppressed, their technological development deliberately stunted. What appeared to be a unified galactic confederation was, in reality, an intricate web of controlled civilizations. Humanity's resistance changed everything. Captain James Liu of the International Space Collaboration Force understood the deeper implications of their conflict. This wasn't just a war of survival. It was becoming a beacon of hope for countless oppressed civilizations. The Krelvax were just the beginning. Communications began to flow from hidden diplomatic channels. The Rentalk, a silicon-based species from the Andromeda satellite galaxies, had been under Zorn control for over 3 generations. Their first message was simple, yet profound. We are watching. We are learning. Research teams discovered something remarkable. Each species that had been under Zorn control had developed unique survival mechanisms. The Krelvax had developed advanced camouflage technologies. The Rentalk had created complex communication networks that could operate beneath the Zorn's detection capabilities, but they had never been able to unite, until now. Dr. Rodriguez assembled a specialized team. Linguists, diplomats, cultural anthropologists, and communication specialists worked together to create a unified communication strategy. They weren't just reaching out to potential allies, they were creating a framework of collective resistance. We're not asking them to fight, Dr. Rodriguez explained to her team. We're showing them they can fight. The psychological impact was immediate. Captured Zorn communications revealed growing concern. Their communication networks began to show signs of internal fracture. Species they had considered permanently subjugated were beginning to show signs of resistance. On a small research station, orbiting a distant moon, a group of Zolnar engineers began to modify their existing technology. They had watched human adaptability, human resilience, and something fundamental was changing in their perspective. Lieutenant Rebecca Chen, coordinating the diplomatic outreach, understood the delicate nature of their mission. This wasn't about creating a military alliance. This was about inspiring hope. Diplomatic packages were carefully constructed. They contained not just technological information, but cultural exchanges. Music from Earth, artistic representations, scientific discoveries. Each transmission was a message. Humanity was offering more than resistance. They were offering partnership. The Zorn had controlled their subjugated species through a complex system of technological and cultural suppression. They maintained order through isolation, preventing different species from communicating or sharing resources. Humanity's approach was fundamentally different. Within weeks, a network began to form. It wasn't a traditional military alliance, it was something more organic, more dynamic. Species that had been isolated for generations began to share information, to collaborate, to dream of liberation. Fleet Commander Michael Zhang watched the developing situation with a mixture of strategic calculation and genuine hope. The initial war of survival was transforming into something much larger, a potential galactic revolution. The Zorn had believed their control was absolute. They had spent millennia perfecting a system of oppression that seemed unbreakable. They had not anticipated humanity. As communication networks expanded, as hope began to spread across multiple star systems, one thing became increasingly clear. This was no longer just a war between humans and the Zorn. This was a war for the future of the galaxy. The Proxima Centauri system became the crucible of galactic transformation. 70% of the Zorn Collective's entire military fleet converged in what they believed would be the final decisive battle that would crush human resistance once and for all. Admiral Sandra Rodriguez studied the holographic battle display with a calm that belied the magnitude of the impending conflict. Around her, the United Earth Defense Command worked with a synchronicity that defied traditional military protocols. This was not going to be a conventional battle. It would be a symphony of human innovation. The Zorn fleet was a terrifying sight. Massive ships that could obliterate entire planetary systems stretched across the star system. Their weapon systems charged to maximum capacity. Each vessel represented millennia of technological development, a force that had conquered hundreds of civilizations without mercy. They had no concept of what was about to happen. Lieutenant Michael Chen commanded the first wave of human defensive forces. His fleet was deliberately designed to look inadequate, a psychological weapon as much as a military strategy. Small, seemingly fragile vessels moved with a fluidity that suggested something far more complex was happening. "Initiate gravitational disruption protocol," Chen commanded. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The human vessels didn't just defend, they transformed the entire Proxima Centauri system into a weapon. Asteroids became projectiles. Planetary gravitational fields became defensive shields. Moons were repositioned with mathematical precision that bordered on the miraculous. A captured Zorn communication stream revealed their growing confusion. Intercepted communication. Tactical officer. Their ships are rearranging the star system. Itself. Fleet commander. That is not possible. Recalibrate targeting systems. The human strategy was beautifully complex. Each ship was not just a combat unit, but part of a larger living network. They communicated instantaneously, adapting to the battle in real time. Where traditional military doctrine suggested rigid formations, human vessels moved like a living organism, fluid, unpredictable, impossible to anticipate. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's communication disruption teams worked simultaneously. While the IDU physical battle raged, they introduced increasingly complex psychological warfare techniques into Zorn communication networks. Small disruptions, seemingly random data insertions that slowly eroded the alien fleet's cohesion. The liberated species that had joined humanity's cause played crucial roles. The Krelvax provided advanced stealth technologies. The Rentok contributed quantum communication techniques. Each allied species brought unique capabilities, creating a hybrid force that was greater than the sum of its parts. Fleet Commander Jiang watched the battle unfold with a sense of profound understanding. This was more than a military engagement. This was a demonstration of a fundamental truth about collective intelligence, about the power of diverse adaptive systems. Zorn ships began to fall, not through overwhelming firepower, but through a combination of technological innovation, psychological disruption, and an approach to warfare that was completely alien to their understanding. The gravitational manipulation was particularly devastating. Human vessels used the complex gravitational interactions of the star system itself as both shield and weapon. A small ship would suddenly accelerate using a planet's gravitational pull, turning what should have been a disadvantage into an unexpected offensive maneuver. As the battle entered its critical phase, something extraordinary happened. The Zorn fleet began to fragment, not through physical destruction but through a systemic breakdown of their collective communication and strategic cohesion. Admiral Rodriguez understood the deeper significance. This wasn't just about winning a battle. This was about demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to collective action, to problem solving, to existence itself. The Proxima Centauri system burned with the light of 1,000 dying ships, but among the destruction, a new understanding was emerging. Humanity had not just fought a war, they had rewritten the rules of galactic engagement. The first signs of systemic breakdown appeared in the most unexpected places. Deep within the communication networks of the Zorn Collective, something fundamental was unraveling. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the holographic displays with a mixture of scientific fascination and strategic calculation. What had begun as a targeted communication disruption was now revealing itself to be something far more profound. a complete psychological deconstruction of an entire galactic civilization. The Abi, Zorn had built their civilization on a premise of absolute control. Their entire societal structure was a complex machine designed to eliminate individual variation, to create a perfectly predictable collective consciousness. Hierarchy was not just a political system, it was their fundamental understanding of existence. Humanity represented the ultimate virus in their system. Intercepted communications began to show increasingly erratic patterns. Where Zorn transmissions had once been models of clinical precision, they now displayed something unprecedented: doubt, confusion, and something that almost resembled individual thought. Fleet Commander Michael Zhang understood the deeper implications. This was not just a military victory. This was a fundamental challenge to the Zorn's entire conceptual framework of civilization. "They're breaking down," Dr. Rodriguez explained to her team. "Not just militarily, psychologically." The process was fascinating. Each liberated species that joined humanity's cause introduced new variables into the Zorn communication networks. The Krelvax brought their advanced camouflage technologies. The Rentok contributed quantum communication techniques that introduced levels of uncertainty the Zorn had never encountered. But the most potent weapon was something uniquely human: unpredictability. Lieutenant Rebecca Chen led a specialized psychological warfare team. Their approach was revolutionary. They didn't just disrupt Zorn communications, they introduced complex, multi-layered messages that challenged the very foundation of Zorn cognitive processing. Artistic transmissions were weaponized. Music that defied mathematical prediction. Visual art that broke traditional perceptual patterns. Cultural exchanges that introduced concepts of individual expression. The Zorn had systematically eliminated from their own civilization. A captured Zorn communication log revealed the growing internal conflict. Intercepted communication. Junior Tactical Officer. The patterns, they do not conform to any known predictive model. Senior Coordinator. Eliminate the anomalies. Junior Tactical Officer. Which anomalies? They are everywhere. The Zorn had spent millennia perfecting a system of absolute control. Individual thought had been systematically removed from their civilization. Creativity was considered a fundamental weakness. Variation was a threat to be eliminated. Humanity represented everything they had spent generations trying to suppress. Dr. Sarah Martinez, leading the cultural analysis team, understood the profound psychological impact. Each transmission was carefully designed to introduce concepts that were fundamentally incompatible with Zorn cognitive structures. Ideas of individual freedom, concepts of creative expression, the value of unpredictability. The liberated species watched and learned. The Krelvax developed new communication techniques that introduced layers of uncertainty. The Rentok began to modify their own technological systems, introducing adaptive algorithms that mimicked human cognitive processes. Fleet Commander Zhang watched the systemic breakdown with a sense of historical significance. This was more than a military victory. This was a fundamental challenge to an entire way of understanding existence. The Zorn had believed their system was unbreakable. They had conquered hundreds of species, systematically eliminating any possibility of resistance. Their communication networks, their military structures, their entire civilization was built on the premise of absolute predictability. They had not anticipated humanity. As communication networks began to fragment, as individual units within the Zorn collective began to show signs of independent thought, something extraordinary happened. The most rigid, most controlled civilization in galactic history began to experience something they had eliminated generations ago. They began to dream. The psychological collapse was complete, not through military might, but through the simple, powerful introduction of a fundamental truth. Individual expression is not a weakness. It is the most powerful force in the universe. The treaty negotiations took place on a neutral space station positioned at the exact gravitational midpoint between Earth and the remaining Zorn territories. Representatives from hundreds of liberated species gathered, watching with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez led the human diplomatic team. Her approach was neither triumphant nor vindictive. She understood that this moment was about more than a single conflict. It was about redefining galactic relationships. Fleet Commander Michael Jang stood beside her, a living reminder of the military prowess that had brought the Zorn to this moment. But his presence was more symbolic than threatening. Every movement, every gesture was carefully calculated to demonstrate a fundamental difference in human approach to power. The Zorn delegation arrived in what could only be described as a state of collective psychological reconstruction, where they had once been a monolithic, perfectly synchronized collective. They now displayed something unprecedented: individual variations, moments of hesitation, traces of what could only be described as individual thought. "We propose," Dr. Rodriguez began, her voice calm and measured, "a complete restructuring of galactic governance." The proposal was revolutionary. Instead of a hierarchical system of control, humanity suggested a collaborative network. Species would maintain their cultural identities, their technological developments, their unique characteristics. The central, governing body would exist not to control, but to facilitate communication, ensure mutual protection, and promote collective growth. The liberated species watched with growing excitement. The Krellvax representatives leaned forward, their crystalline, communication structures vibrating with anticipation. The Rentok delegation exchanged quick, complex communication patterns that suggested deep approval. What made the human proposal so radical was its fundamental understanding of diversity. Where the Zorn had seen variation as a threat, humanity saw it as the ultimate strength. Each species would be encouraged to develop, to innovate, to express its unique potential. Dr. Sarah Martinez, leading the cultural integration team, presented comprehensive plans for technological and cultural exchange. Research facilities would be established that brought together scientists from hundreds of different species. Educational networks would be created that allowed for unprecedented levels of cross-cultural understanding. The treaty documents were unlike any in galactic history. They were not about conquest or control, but about potential. Each clause was carefully constructed to prevent future conflicts while promoting collective growth. Fleet Commander Zhang understood the deeper significance. This was more than a diplomatic document. This was a fundamental reimagining of how intelligent species could coexist. Technological exchange became a cornerstone of the new agreement. The hybrid technologies developed during the conflict, combinations of human creativity, Zorn precision, Krellvax adaptive capabilities, and Rentok quantum communication, would be shared openly. No species would be prevented from developing its full potential. The most radical provision came near the end of the document, a clause that guaranteed the right of individual expression for all sentient beings. No civilization could suppress the creative potential of its members. No collective could eliminate individual thought. As the final signatures were placed, something extraordinary happened. The representatives from various species began to communicate, not through formal diplomatic channels, but through spontaneous, genuine exchanges of curiosity and hope. Dr. Rodriguez watched the scene with a sense of profound understanding. This was not a moment of human victory. This was a moment of collective potential. The Zorn representative, speaking for the first time with a voice that suggested individual thought, made a statement that would be recorded in galactic historical archives. "We did not understand. Variation is not a weakness. It is the source of all possibility." The space station seemed to vibrate with a new kind of energy. Hundreds of species, once separated by fear and control, now looked at each other with genuine curiosity. Humanity had not just won a war, they had shown the galaxy a new way of existing.